4 feet of. Thanks, sweetie.
Hey, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us. We're live right now. I've got my special guest, Dark Woodz, with me tonight. He is a member of the group. He is a friend of the channel and also a fellow, I don't know, I don't like to call myself a researcher. I'm a podcaster and I'm a dogman eyewitness. I've never seen Bigfoot, but I'm a dogman eyewitness podcaster. And I guess, like, with, I guess like the literal, not the literal version. I don't consider myself a researcher, but we're all in this together. We're all out there trying to learn about these creatures. Dark Woodz has a history of Dogman, Bigfoot, other cryptids, and other unknown creatures on his property. And so I'm very happy to have him with us tonight. Dark Woodz, thank you for joining us on the podcast here tonight at Crypto Normal Encounters with B Moth. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Can you, real quick, I want to just give a shout out to everybody that's in the chat. Sugar Britches, Marquetta Jones, thank y'all for showing up. Suge, thank you for showing up. Primal Cry, Rooster, thank you for showing up. Showing up tonight. It's live to your and let them know that we're live right now. It's going to be a great show. Unacknowledged and Unknown, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for Easy Designs, thank you for showing up tonight. Darcy's Wiki, thank you. Jeremy Harrison, Tammy Blair, and Aussie Sue, thank all of y'all for showing up. Y'all, as everybody joins the live chat with us tonight, y'all make sure to let people know when they have a question for the guests to make sure to put their questions in all caps. It's easier for me to recognize those questions as they come in. TCR 444, thank you for showing up tonight. Let everybody know, and y'all let everybody also know as they come in to please click the like button. And with that being said, Dark Woodz, can you give kind of a brief bio of yourself? Tell us how you got into cryptid research or dogma or any of that. How did you get started with this?
Okay, I moved up here in 2019, but I came up here on vacation in 2018, and in the middle of the night, 40 feet in the wood line from the edge of the driveway, uh, apparently a tree about 15 feet at the top part of a tree had broke off and made its way through an entire forest of other taller trees and landed on my truck. Had a 95 Blazer and it smashed the roof all the way down to the frame. It hit so hard that it turned one of my body mounts inside out and totally totaled the car. During that time that happened, there was no storms, there was no wind. Apparently, something broke it off and carried it through the woods and clubbed the truck. And what's very interesting is during that time, I knew the word Bigfoot. I never thought much about it. Sure, it's possible that they exist, but that was about it. After that happened, and I was able to get a rental car and I was able to get back to home, I just had this massive burning desire to research Bigfoot for some reason. And I had some people told me that they probably implanted that into my brain because there was a situation here with the truck. Um, Primal Cry and her son lives here. They've lived here on their own. They camp outdoors. Uh, they're uh, pretty active outside. And I believe there's a Bigfoot clan up here that, because if you understand some of the information on how clans work, if they see Primal Cry with a child and there's no male around, some of these will actually take up a position of making sure they're safe and protected. Because, Primal Cry is a good person and all that. And I believe that when I came up here, I was some foreigner, and they were, I don't know, they might have been upset I was around. I'm not really sure, but whatever the case was, that's what happened to the car. We even had a dog that if deer would walk around out here, she would bark all the time. and she never barked. Nobody heard the wreckage. It would be equivalent to a 40, 50-mile-an-hour crash, the way the truck was destroyed. But no one woke up. No one heard it. Nothing. It was just really weird and kind of supernatural. But because of that incident, I ended up moving up here a year later, and I've done a lot of research, armchair research, which I think is a very valuable thing because you can find some gold nuggets in a lot of people's encounters, and you can filter through all that stuff and pick out things that are similar to what you've experienced. And so ever since I done that, I came up here and then obviously started having experiences. I had a lot of experiences up here in a short period of time, and it's pretty amazing and fascinating as well. So I mean, and this up here is up in the northern part of Wisconsin. I'm just about 20 minutes from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, so it's pretty wilderness. I got Woodz 360 all the way around the house, right up against it, and I could drive 40 minutes to my job, and I'm still in a forest. Finding open areas up here is pretty rare, unless you're at a supermarket somewhere down in a town, 40 minutes away. But yeah, it's pretty nice.
Wow, that's real interesting. And you stay right there in the woods. And I know you said like you're deep off in there to the point where there's not another house for miles. Do you get a lot of activity on your property? Because I know that you have a lot going on. You sent me a lot of the pictures, and I tried to upload those tonight, and they just, for whatever reason, it wouldn't allow me to do it even after it asked for me to create a slideshow. I created a slideshow, and it still wouldn't allow me to do it. And I just, I don't know what's going on. And I think that's by design. I kept trying to save it and download them, it just wouldn't do. But I want to know, like, basically, when it comes to these creatures, because I asked you several of your different encounters that you've had with these, as we call them, cryptids. I'm going to ask you in minutes what you think they are, but can you tell everybody real quick what are your most, after that first incident, your first encounter, what was your second encounter and what happened after that? Just go through some of your encounters and sightings, and then I'm going to ask you some more questions after that.
Okay. And later on too, if anyone wants to see those photos that I have, the evidence of what's going on around here, they can definitely find that in our the Facebook group called Primal Cry in the Dark Woods. And if you go in there and if you're on a cell phone, if you hit the announcement tab, you'll get access to all the photos. If you're in the computer, you'll see it in features. Um, but the next encounter, I would say, was really like there's the evidence I found along the way. So the very next thing that I found was a 20, 23-inch footprint of a Sasquatch. And I've also had a tracker say that it was 26 inches. Um, but it's a very large footprint. You can see all the individual toes. It There's along the house here. There's a logging road, and they cleared out a small section of woods back there because about 10-minute walk back is a river.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and up here, where you got all these forest trees, pines, a lot of different kinds of pines. There's pine needles and things on the ground, so it's hard to get tracks. But in that area where they kind of cleared it out, that's where I go to find game trail, like deer tracks or whatever, to see what's going on because I do hunt in the fall. So when I was back there, that's when I found that 23-inch footprint. But it stepped on a bunch of decayed plant material, and you could tell that it stuck to the bottom of its foot. And you can see there is a mid-torso joint in the center of the foot on that Sasquatch. And I've heard that some of them don't have that and some do. But this one here definitely did. And later on, I actually caught a photo, I think, of the same Sasquatch, because I got the print early in April. It was April 20th. I know that for a fact. And then later on in February, I was plowing out my driveway with a snowblower. And at the end of the driveway, I took
Mm-hmm.
a photo of all the stuff I did. And in the background, there's a Sasquatch watching that was watching me plow the driveway out. And I took photos because there's a busted birch tree right next to where he's standing. So I can get a measurement of how high that tree is. And I did the logistics on how high the Sasquatch was. And it's every bit of 13 plus feet tall. I bet it weighed probably near 2,000 pounds. It's a huge Sasquatch.
God. How tall do you think it was? I mean,
It was around 14 feet all day long. And it's the no neck type. Its head sunk down and it's got massive round shoulders, bowling balls or beach balls on its shoulders, But you could see its hands and its fingers, and the fingers are just so huge. It's hard to even comprehend. They're just like two or three, like one finger is probably about this big, just
oh my
huge.
God. That's all. That's terrifying. Now I know, like, 'cause you and Primal Cry, y'all are in the chat a lot, and I like y'all being in the chat because y'all from that different mindset on these creatures, Dogman and Bigfoot. I guess because your experiences with them for the most part are positive. And do you feel like most people, when it comes to Dogman and Bigfoot, are mostly fear mongering when it comes to them?
What do you mean by fear mongering?
Like you have some people on certain channels, they're demons, they're like, and I told y'all, like, I
Oh,
believe that they're Nephilim, but some people believe that, these creatures will never hurt a person, they've never killed or harmed anybody or anything like that. What do you feel about that? What are you guys' thoughts about that? There's several different, lines of rationale when it comes to it. What are your thoughts when it comes to Big Fan? What are your thoughts on it?
okay. Well, thanks for clearing that up for me. Um, the way we see it, how we have been living up here, is they coexist with us. They've never really did anything aggressive or threatening to us. Um, Matter of fact, Primal Cry has seen one come out of the woodland and run into the forest across the logging road, and she could barely keep her eyes on. We have photos of them really close to us. I had, I believe, a Sasquatch behind me, probably about 10 feet at night, and I could hear it breathing. I kind of chickened out on looking at it because it was next to the house, and I didn't know if I looked at it, if it would get upset. So the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
we coexist, and there's been no aggression or anything going on. But at the same time, you don't know their rules, how they uh, how they view the world or things, and something that you innocently do might piss them off. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't look at them. It was too close to the house. I didn't want things to happen. But but overall, like with the encounter that I had with the group, which consisted of a female dogman, a male dogman, a pup dogman, and a large Sasquatch, they're all together. There is no aggression. I've never felt doom or fear or anything like that here in the woods from them. And I actually was really close to them. They didn't do it. So far, I would say it's peaceful, but we always, because I've heard a lot of stories where, you know, a couple got lost in the woods and a mountain lion was attacking them and the Sasquatch came up and destroyed the mountain lion and whatever. I believe that that's possible.
Yeah.
I've seen where we don't have those kind of situations here where they're aggressive, but at the same time, no matter, even if you had the best scenario with, and we call them forest people, um, if you have the best scenario with the forest people, we still apply discernment to the max. You have to be really aware, you have to be on guard, and you have to know what you're doing because you don't want to do something that'll make a situation really bad. And what do we know about these? So the etiquettes they have are probably not the same as ours. So it
What
is a
kind of
tricky
things
line.
do you? Well, I was
But
going to say, what kind of things did you say? Because Primal Cry, and I agree with you on that. Primal Cry was also saying, I posted her comment on the screen. She said you have to use discernment with them, and they're not all the same. What kind of things would
Right.
be a situation where you cause them to be aggressive or cause it to not be a good situation?
Well, I think if you're going through the woods and you surprise one, that might not turn out too good. I guarantee, I think I've never tried this. Obviously, I wouldn't ask anyone to do so. I don't think running around in the woods at night shooting off guns and things would be a smart idea. I think because I know that they're here and we see them, that they're gonna be like, "What the heck are you doing?" So, I mean, there's some common sense things, The way we operate
Mm-hmm.
here is we have love, peace, and respect. And when you do that, and I'm not out looking for them, because you'll never find them. We'll come outside and we'll have a bonfire and have fun, or we'll hang out in the garden or do whatever
Mm-hmm.
we do out here, and it's fun. That's when they show up. So, but if you come
Now,
into
do
an
you
area,
think that they frequent? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, if you come into an area where they have a nursery, and let's say they never seen you, like maybe if I did, they might scare me out of there, but someone that they don't see all the time and know that they're not stupid people, if someone stranger walked in there, wherever, if they had a nursery or something, I could see some goofy going on for sure.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think, based on what you've seen on your encounters and sightings that you've had with these cryptids that are on your property? What type of things have you seen? Or first of all, before I even ask you that, are you of the mindset that they are flesh and blood, or that there are different ones that are some of them that are spiritual creatures or interdimensional? What are your thoughts on them? What they are?
I can't, I can't say my thoughts on them would apply to everyone's situation. But for up here, um, they are definitely non-aggressive. What was exactly the question again? I was thinking about a million other things.
What do you think that some of them are flesh and blood and some of them are, I guess, what you would say supernatural type creatures? And I asked that because I was asked a question at one point in time, as far as the ones that hide behind trees, if they can cloak and make themselves invisible, then why hide behind trees? And my only thought, my own opinion from that was that maybe all of them don't all have the same abilities. I don't think that all of them have the same ability to do that. Or maybe sometimes they don't have the right frequency or right energy is not there for that, or it's just not necessary in all cases for them to do that. And in some cases, maybe they're young and the young ones have garnered those abilities to be able to cloak or disappear like that yet. But what are your thoughts on that as far as what these creatures are? Or if they're flesh and
I
blood,
believe that.
do you feel? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I believe that they are flesh and blood and spiritual at the same time. Um, it's. I'm not saying that they're fallen angels, but the angels can be spiritual. They are spiritual, but they can also manifest in the flesh. And I've heard too many situations, and situations where a Sasquatch would walk out into a muddy field and there's no trees for 300 yards on either side, and all of a sudden the tracks disappear, like it just disappeared. So I would say, sure, if you had abilities to create portals and things, I don't think that makes you supernatural, but these other aspects that they have where they can cloak and stuff. And I also wonder too if cloaking is a limited thing where you have to use energy. So maybe they could do it 3 times a day. Sometimes if they don't cloak and people see them, maybe they wanted those people to see them. Uh, you know, there's so many different
Mm-hmm.
reasons why things happen that we can't really nail down the actual truth on it.
What is things as far? Well, I'm kind of all over the place because I got so many questions. I'm kind of excited about tonight's show. But what is one of the strangest things that you have ever, I guess, seen these things do?
Well, there was one strange incident that occurred, and there's a mushroom called a chaga up here that we cut off of birch trees. Really beneficial. So we were chaga hunting, and Primal was driving, and I could tell by her face that she seen something. And I'm like, "What'd you see?" And she said, "I just seen a Sasquatch head." And we locked eyes, and it ducked out as soon as we came around the corner of this logging road. We still got about a half mile to
Mm-hmm.
go. So I told her it's probably going to parallel us to where we're going to go get the chaga. So I said, keep our eyes out. So we get there and we get out of the car, and I walk, scan, walk, scan, walk, scan, looking around, and sure enough, I see it further into the woods. It's just standing there. It looks like this. It's got its hand up in the tree. And so we went and I had to carry a ladder through the woods. So we scooted that ladder through the woods, climbed up the tree, cut that chaga down as fast as we could. And then we had a gift bag, like a black leather bag. I put a cool red rock in there. And then Primal put some
Mm-hmm.
tobacco in, and we left it at the tree stump. So that was on a weekend, on a Saturday. The following Saturday, I get up and I go outside, and I had cut some birch discs that are pretty fresh. They're real hard wood. And I noticed something sticking out of the birch disc. And I go over to look at it, and it's a stick. And it's a stick that something broke off, and it has two arms up it looks kind of like a human with its arms up, like a hug or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pressed into this disc. And there's no way I could press something like that, a fragile stick, into a hard piece of wood. I don't even understand how he did that. But it was facing the house the way the arms were and everything. And there's no way a branch fell out of the tree and made it look like a human stuck in a piece of wood, because it would never be able to stick into it. But I thought that was crazy. And I showed Primal, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, there's one thing we could think of is we left an offering, a gift for taking the mushroom out of. Because when we came into that area to get that mushroom, there were branches and trees bent down and wove off a path. That was the entrance to get into there. So I knew that was a
Uh-huh.
territory, and I seen it down at the end of the forest watching. But I believe because we left that gift bag there, the offering, that it found where we lived, which I don't think it was only a mile away from the house. But next weekend they came up and left that there. That's the only thing we could think of. But it's amazing because I tried. It was hard to pull the stick out of the wood, and I couldn't even put it back in the wood. So I don't know what kind of some serious force without destroying the stick was able to push that into that piece of wood.
Now, do you, Primal Cry, do y'all gift these creatures? Like, I know a lot of people say, well, real quick, real quick, Brown Dwarf said that's a real nice backdrop, Dark Woods. That's not a backdrop, Brown Dwarf. He's actually out there. That's his, that
This
he's
is
actually out there in the
in the
woods right
woods.
now. That's not a, they thought that was a backdrop. But yeah, I think that that's real interesting,
Welcome to the
that you
dark
brought
room.
that up. Where and he's in Wisconsin. So being in
Yeah,
Wisconsin, I can't believe it. Like this, we got snow here. I mean, he's got snow there, and it's like 80 degrees here in Alabama. But now, do y'all get them, the dark woods, primal cry? Do y'all get these creatures? I've heard a lot of people say that it's dangerous to gift them if you don't plan on continuing to keep that up. That can be a dangerous situation as well because a lot of times they'll come back looking for that.
yeah, we do not gift them. And in reality, they gift us. Like, we did do that offering, because we took something from their floors. For all I know, I was walking in his living room to get that mushroom out of the tree. So, like I said, out of respect, I left the gift there. And then he showed us respect, he or she, I'm not really sure, by giving us a gift later on, following weekend. But as far as us gifting, we don't do that at all. We do have a garden that's back over that way that I carved out of the woods. Yeah, kind of strange. It's a forest garden, but in there we have a gazebo that has some shelves, and Primal Cry had found some rocks nearby that were never around, and we suspect that they gifted us those rocks as well. So we put them in the garden and stuff like that. But that's as far as gifting goes.
Now, before we've talked about a few things. One of the things that I found really interesting was we were talking about the and one of the things that you had brought up during that discussion, and I don't know if you want me to bring up or not. If you can't talk about it on the show, then that's fine. I understand. But you felt like that some of the reason why the activity of the sightings, as far as Bigfoot, Dogman, and other cryptids, is ramping up, is because the magnetosphere is thinning, or as we said, the veil is being lifted. Can you expound on that?
Well, our magnetic field on the planet is collapsing at the moment. There's going to be eventually a polar shift that'll occur on the planet, probably in our lifetimes for sure. But at the moment, it's thinning out, and some of the NASA information about portals um, has everything to do with the magnetic field and solar winds that hit it, because they crisscross behind the planet and cross over themselves, and it creates X points, which is mass electron diffusion regions. And under that kind of
Mm-hmm.
construct of energy, it rips a hole in the magnetic field, and that's actually considered a portal. And I also found some congresswoman that was talking about how, and I remember, I gotta find out what her first name is. I don't know what her last name is, but I tried looking her up. I couldn't find the info. But she was stating that the magnetic field is what the veil is considered. And through some of the things that I've understand biblically, it sounds like it's pretty accurate. Uh, so if the magnetic field, first off, if that magnetic field ever was to be completely gone, the sun without X flares or anything coming off of it would roast this planet
Mm-hmm.
big time. So, I mean, it's not a good thing if we lose the magnetic field, but it is severely weak. And I believe that that is one of the prime factors of why we're seeing a lot more cryptids these days. Plus, too, if you go back into biblical times, um, there's some suspicion that I think about the beast of the field. And a lot of these people are seeing more dogman and stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they were for, the purpose of being the beast of the field that would take out a third of man's population. And what they're doing now is just taking stock of who's protected and who's not. So Primo and I kind of believe that they're going to wipe out some of these deep negative people that
And
have no chance of returning. I would just say.
I've heard
But
that.
yeah,
I've heard that they're thrown out there a few times. And I think, well, because if you look at it, you got to wonder. Like a lot of the times when some of these cases, you wonder, like the times you hear of people who have been attacked or killed, or stuff like that. But then you've got other people who are also amongst them in the woods as well, and nothing happens to them. It, like for my dogman sightings that I had, and I always bring this up just guests that I have on the show, is saying like none of my experiences I can say that were negative, or I felt like that I was in harm's way or anything like that. I can just say that they watched from a safe distance. And I don't know if sometimes that is because they know you, like how they know you in Primal Cries. You're right there on that same property with them and you live in harmony with them, and they don't feel like you're a threat and they know that you mean them any harm. But I also feel like that certain ones of us, and I might be completely wrong about this, I feel like certain people have specific gifts, specific things about themselves that other people may not have or are not open to, or special gifts or abilities. And I can't say if that's a fact for sure, but I just feel like that also goes along too with the reason why some people are unable to see them on photos, which is clear to everybody else that some people can't see them. And a lot of people also don't realize a lot of the times they're right there amongst us when we don't even realize it.
Yes. Yep. And then two, the other thing about people not being able to see certain photos, your brain develops throughout your lifetime and has certain paths of thought. And some people can see things right away, other people can't. And that's why I always outline or circle whatever I have, because I understand it's not the photo, it's the people who are perceiving it. And the situation is that sometimes I'll look at a photo and I'll be like, okay, I don't see nothing. And then a month later, I'll look at the same photo and all of a sudden I see it. So it's, pareidoia could be a teacher for you for sure, because it lets you learn what's real, what's not. I mean, start discerning, well, this looks like an arm, and you find out later on it's a branch or something like that. I mean, you have to really dig into all that kind of aspects in a photo to make sure what you have is legit. But pictures that I've been able to get a hold of, uh, there's no misconception of those kind of things. They're 100% accurate. Body forms, head spaces, eyes, ears, everything. But yeah, pareidoia
Absolutely.
and people's perspectives are definitely different.
And I'm gonna add Chris in here with us real quick. He co-hosts with me sometime, but I also, before I add him in, I wanted to ask you. We were talking about portals minutes ago, and one of the things I wanted to ask about portals are portals. I've heard some people say that they can see portals opening, and I've heard others say that portals don't exist. Or is that, I guess that's that interdimensional aspect of, like we were talking about, if when you see Bigfoot or Dogman footprints in the middle of a field or in the middle of the snow and there's no tree or anything for them to jump up on to climb away or to get away. It's just like they completely disappear. Do you feel at those times that is an example of them going into a portal? Or is a portal also, like I was just asking, is that something that can be seen?
It could be, like I said, I believe, like, we really don't know much about these forest people, but to me, in some aspects, some of the things that I've heard happen, that they do seem spiritual and physical at the same time, or can go in between each other. So as far as, like, I don't know if it could be even much more than just slipping into a portal. They could just be able to bend or use frequency or whatever it may be to slip from one dimension into another. But there are entities, besides what we know, that actually uses portals, and they're actually called portal traps. You walk into it and you're never coming back out because something on the other end is feasting on you. So yeah, there's a lot of things we have no idea about that's in this world.
Um, and I've heard other people say that too, and I'm gonna let Chris chime in on this as well because I know Chris has spoken also about portals. But I wanted to ask. I've heard a few people say that when it comes to portals, that um, I can't remember. I just completely lost my thought on that. But if you go into a portal, there's a possibility that you cannot come back out. You have to get out of it before it closes. And can people go into portals?
Oh yeah,
Not being supernatural.
yep. I've read
Okay.
some stories on that. I did a deep dive on portals. There's a lady that was on a farm, and then she watched her husband walk across the field and disappear. And then she was calling out to him, and he could respond. He could hear her, and she could hear him call back. And he stayed wherever he was in this portal for about 2 weeks. And the whole town would come out, and because it became big news. And they were talking back and forth, and they were trying to get the guy to come back out, but he couldn't find his way out. And if I remember correctly, I think he said all he saw was just white. but he knew he wasn't in Earth or whatever. But this lasted for about 2 weeks. Then finally, the communication between him and his wife was gone, and that was it for him.
I remember that. Chris, did you want to chime in on that?
No, hi Stephen. By the way, how's my? Can you hear me good?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Good. I don't. I mean, we talked last week about that one incident. It was in New Mexico. One of the this Pueblo cliff dwelling uh, structures. They build up in the mesas, and it was a national park, and this family had stopped on a road trip, and the husband got out to just take a walk up to see them, and he disappeared. Like 411 case. It's a politest thing. And for the next couple of days, people that were still, viewing the park after the search was somewhat terminated or they couldn't find anything, were hearing this man's voice calling for help, yet nobody could locate the body. So, if that was a portal, that would indicate that somebody could go through it. I don't think. Maybe it's a
Yep.
one way road. Who knows? For some people, man. I mean, the portal thing is. I mean, I believe that I know they exist. Um, I also think that I think they manifest in different ways. I don't think they always. We have this thing that a portal probably looks like a Stargate, right, or from SG-1 or one of those shows, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't know that there's a specific geometry
True.
to it. Uh, I think that they have different functions, different purposes. I've heard stories that the forest people don't use them lightly. I don't know if that's true or not. We were told that the one photograph, legitimate great photograph that I know is real of a portal, we were told that that was normal for them. That was normal. That was what came back. So yeah, there's that guy in Washington. I hate to even say his name because I just have dismissed him in a lot of ways. But he says that you know who I'm talking about. He says that the portal thing. He actually had his research spot about 10 years ago. This guy's got a bunch of books, whatever. I think he had some great stuff, and then kind of flipped off into Fantasyville. But he says that they brought an electromagnetic generating machine to a portal spot because the forest people needed help to open it, and they assisted with that. There's some great exodus that came. And so I take that with a complete grain of salt because I don't think they
Well,
need.
I'll tell you what, real quick, before I interrupt you there. The electromagnetic theory, that's a really good probability because that's exactly how our magnetic field is created through the poles and
I agree.
the
I
core
think
of
they're
the
generated by that.
yeah, because the core of the Earth is made out of iron and magma. That's what creates a north and south pole charge, and that actually helps protect us for the solar winds from the sun, and it absorbs those winds to heat up life inside the Earth to give life to Earth. But right now, it's on full tilt. It's not a good scenario.
Agreed. I agree with that aspect of it. I'm just not so sure that it requires Homo sapien assistance to generate
Yeah,
or open anything. I'm pretty sure that they've got that science or whatever it is locked down. I I'm curious because I always think that ties into structures. You know, I'm good friends with Mark Abel, who is the guy from Colorado Bigfoot. I've been up there with him a couple of times. He's got some amazing situations going on. But when you go into some of his areas, which are so remote, and the way the structures are laid out, and it's not just the occasional TP. These are like, you know, acres of uh, of structures all interconnected, not touching the ground. And if you do enough deep dive research, you'll see that some of these structures emulate what Tesla was building. I mean, identical, literally
yeah,
identical.
yeah,
Spaces
yeah.
that are perfectly aligned. And I believe to a certain extent that is a type of power grid, like a natural power grid, somehow tapping into that energy. And I'm
Yeah.
curious. I know because my first encounter was in Wisconsin 31 years ago, and
Oh wow.
so I know that, yeah, right near Fall River. No, what was it? It's near Prescott, but back a little bit, where
Okay.
the kind of near where the Kansas City Chiefs have summer their summer camp. Anyway, I'm curious. I see a lot of woods back there. I'm just curious about the structure situation where you're at, because I'm always fascinated by that.
Well, not too far from here, I went out hunting this fall, and I went into a new area, kind of deep in the woods. There's a river nearby as well. I did see several structures back there, which blew my mind. Nothing massive or intricate, but definitely sticks bent over, trees bent over, woven together, stuff like that. Um, I've heard that you can take an EMF meter and put it inside the structure near the top, and it'll start giving you a reading. So there's some type of energy form there for sure. Back here behind the house, I've seen trees that were bent down and then bent in a massive curve around a bunch of other trees, but you can't do that naturally. There's one tree I got a photo of that's in my group where something grabbed a tree about this big around, twisted it to where it split down the middle, and then they shoved a bunch of branches inside the split and then let it go. So it's like an ass stretch coming out of the center of the tree. Uh, Things like that I've seen here. Nothing as intricate as you were talking about earlier.
I feel like they're not like, Sasquatch art. I feel like they're
Yeah,
designed with purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that, I hear, theories or ideas that, bent trees are trail markers. I don't think they need that stuff. I really don't. I think they know exactly where they are at all times. So
right.
I'm not so sure that that's the case.
There is a functionality with some of the structures. When you get into the X's, those are definitely signposts. Or if you have a tree that they took out of the ground and shoved back in the ground upside down, that's definitely a warning sign. But all these other things, I mean, I can't even imagine or guess what they.
Do you
I have a photo of my group as well where there's a ton of sticks piled up against a tree, and there's a bunch of tiny ones inside. It's so intricately done, and it's sat up there. I don't even know how it can stand against a smaller tree, but there's so many trees. Now I was told that all those sticks and everything represent how many clan members and the types of clan members, from the tiny sticks being the juveniles or real young ones in the clan at that moment. I found that out in the woods for sure.
That's an
And one of the
and
interesting
Chris, if you
concept.
will,
yeah,
my neighbor's getting ready to bring my dog back over. If you will continue with Dark Woods, I will be right back. Let me get my dog from him real quick. But continue on. Y'all keep talking about what y'all talking about, and I'll be right back.
Slacker.
so Chris, you know Jessica Jones, right?
I do.
Okay, so she remote viewed. She said I'm allowed to talk about this, but she remote viewed the back of our property, and she did say that there was floating portals here in the back, um, not permanent ones, but temporary ones that pop in and out. And then across the street where we live, there's just a two-lane road that's considered a highway. But way over there, because there's a lot of swamps and
Right.
marshland up here as well. So over there, there's considered an anchored portal, one that's permanent. And there was another lady by the name of Robin McCrae who said the exact same thing. And neither one of
No,
them
Robin.
knew that, yeah, neither one were giving us, knew that we were asking each of them the same questions. But they both answered exactly the same. And from what I
That's good
understand,
validity.
that, yeah, from what I understand, the anchored portal over there, a lot of things can come through. So the Sasquatch and Dogman actually monitor that one for anything that negative comes through there. So that must be some type of permanent portal. I don't know how you would disband the portal like that, but apparently they have to stand guard with that. And I actually heard one time across the street, some fierce fighting of something huge. Two things really huge going at it at each other for a couple of minutes. And then apparently one of them was a victor because there was a long roar that peeled out right after, the because they're roaring over each other, just roar, 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 and they're going back and forth. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, holy cow, what the heck's going on over there? But eventually somebody won that one. Hopefully it was the team on this side of the fence.
Right? I've heard stories like that they actually have to keep guard and monitor set fixed portals. That's not the first time that story's come to me. Not the same place, obviously, but but when everybody talks about these things, and whether there's just the portal story that I had was just so it happened so randomly, and I've seen so many other phenomenon physically witnessed it that I have no doubt in my mind that is just a part of their norm in their culture.
Yeah.
Anything that goes around with it, like you said, nobody knows. We can all. Anytime I read in the chat when I hear they are, this is, I think, to say anything with 100% assurity is arrogance because it's. I mean, you've been around this for a minute and you've got a lot going on. As is Bettina. We're still all taking the best educated guess within our own logic that we can come up with on any of these things. Whether we're looking at it from a canonical text, ancient scripture, ancient tablet type thing, or some forensic angle of it.
Yeah.
It's always at the end of the day, there's still a lot of wiggle room all the time, man.
Yeah, because
Well,
I feel like we're all trying to figure out what they got. Go ahead, Dark.
I'm ready to move that up to the next level. There's so many different speculations, so much information that we have. The only way I think that I can resolve this is to actually have full communication stuff. So I had an incident with a group of cryptids, force people, and there was some, I don't know if I would call it mind speak, but something definitely did happen with that. And I was allowed to get close to them. And that's where I got some really good do you mind if I tell you the encounter on that? How that works? I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I had to discipline my puppy. She's bad. She's not bad. She's just off the chain.
I can hear you.
Trying to chew up the. She was trying to chew up the wires, and I was trying to make sure I muted my mic too because I wanted. It's like an interference at times, so I try to mute me and Chris's when you're talking. So if you'll go right ahead, I want to hear that.
Okay, cool. So like I told you guys earlier, there's a logging road that went back, and there's a small section of woods that was chopped down. And I gotta switch an earbud real quick. And I went walking back there. It was April, and I didn't have Dogman or anything like that on my mind. I was just out there looking for tracks. And when I go back this way, it was in the spring. The bears are out, and in the summer or in the spring, you got the babies with the cub and the moms. I don't want to get in between the mother bear, the black bear, and the cubs. So I would just walk out, scan, walk, scan. And when I got through the woods behind the house into the opening where the logging area was, as soon as I stepped out into there, I had this thing come over my head. It was a thought intrusion. It was like it wasn't words, but it was more of a knowing, and it was saying there's something over here, and it was like a compass let me know it was to my left. So when I when I heard that, I was like, yeah, right, joking around. I thought it was my mind playing tricks. And it came on again really strong. So at that point, I took it, this is serious. And I became super aware. And I looked straight to my left and I could see something black behind some trees. And I thought, is that a bear? Is that my sixth sense that was goofing with my head? But it was too supernatural to be that. So I thought about making a decision and I did. And I decided I'm going to check it out. I didn't walk straight over there because I thought that would be kind of stupid because I didn't know what it was. But what I ended up doing was getting as close as I can, keeping him in my peripheral view, and got as close as I could without creating any situations. And I remember hearing about if you take a cell phone up to your face and you're taking pictures, that could be to make force people feel agitated or like they don't know what you're doing because you usually hold a gun up like that too, you know. So what I ended up doing was pulling my cell phone out and I brought it up to my chest and I had it facing out to the side where these things were. And I was lucky enough to square the phone and I took a photo. So when I went back to the house, because I left the same way I came back in, I just walked in like I didn't see them. I would pick stuff off the ground. I'd pretend like they weren't there and I'd keep easing my way closer to them. After I took the photo, I did the same thing to leave. And I had no issues. There is no doom, fear, anything stupid, no feelings at all. It was just something happening and that weird mind speak. But when I got back home and I checked out the photos on my computer, there, right there, is a canine head. What it was there is a female, and I'll explain why I know it's a female, but there is a female dog man that's crouched down. She was about 4.5 feet tall. You can see its ears, the snout, the eyes, everything perfect, except there is a small branch covering her eyes. And most of the forest people in these photos had their eyes covered. Um, but she was crouched down. You could see one of her knees bent out around the side of the tree. And there's a small tree to the right of her head, and you can see the back of her fingers, not paws, that is holding the tree. And if you zoom in, you can actually see the individual claws on there. And this type of dogman was black. It had the wolf type head. It wasn't like a hyena or a Doberman or anything like that. It was more wolf looking. And so I freaked out when I saw that and I posted it up in Facebook. And that's when Robin McCrae came along and she's like, did you know there's a baby dog man in that photo? And I'm like, no way. So when I looked at the photo, we've seen it and it's to the left of the female dog man, about 4.5 feet up in a tree. And you can see just its head poking around the corner. And that was the only one out of the 4 forest people that was looking straight at me at where you could see its eyes. And all these pictures are very detailed. Behind the smaller dogman in the tree was a male dogman that was built like Schwarzenegger. It's got massive chest and arms and stuff. You could actually see its hand. And then behind that male dogman was a very large Bigfoot, and it has a conical head. So these 4 were in a group together. And that's a photo evidence that I have that shows there's a Bigfoot that is with 3 other dogmen. And that was in the spring, which tells me something about the birthing cycles. It's not exact. I don't know everything perfect on that. But the smaller pup, it was in that picture, that was in April. I have another baby dogman photo, a really small one that was in June. So I can say that they have pups before April and all the way up into June, based on that information from photographic evidence.
You know, one thing I wanted to mention too, you had Bigfoot and Dogman in some of your photos, and you have a lot of people that say Bigfoot and Dogman are mortal enemies. Do you feel like that's just based on different clans or different groups of Sasquatch or Dogman, whether they're territorial or whether they know these different Dogman or Bigfoot are coming in from different areas and they just don't know them, where they might be rivals? Do you think that that's the case in that? Because I've heard so many cases where they are interacting, and a lot of times they're in photos and on the same property living harmoniously together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, up here, that's what they do. They do live harmoniously together. I think they work something out between the two. I do know, like, the forest people considering Sasquatch and Dogman, they're just like people. They're all different. Um, the ones down south seem to be more aggressive, and the ones up north overall seem to be more passive for some reason. But I'm sure that there's just like people, there's certain families that feud with other families, you know, and then uh, other families join together and coexist to benefit each other, you know.
Absolutely. Chris, did you want to chime in on that before I ask him any more questions?
Uh, I'm always fascinated when when I hear um, people's experiences that start to match up and jibe with mine, because that's not always, it's frequently not the case, um,
Yeah.
so our experience in the last couple of years has changed a lot. When we intentionally put the camera down, we started to have some pretty astounding back and forth, and
Yeah.
that segued into mind speak and segued into um, a lot of different things. They, the physical encounters they've shown themselves. It's almost like a frequent thing. There's been members of our group that have been. This will sound nuts, but this is the truth. This is my truth. That have been given teachers. The with the clan family aspect of it, what you're just talking about, and I mean, they when I hear people say like, oh well, they'll migrate south in the winter or something like that, like that's not what's happened. Where they are is where they are. Like they have their set boundaries, they have their set areas. I am interested that the fact that one of the other people that I feel has had a lot of the same types of encounters that we've had and that you've had, swears that there's an enmity between Sasquatch people and Dogman, and that it's that and I've never experienced that. Now I don't. There's not a lot of Dogman activity where we are. There is some. I mean, back when I was still actively engaged in videography and photographing, I catch it often or somewhat frequently. You know what I mean? Always see the Sasquatch people, but I never saw anything that would resemble animosity between the two of them. So I like to hear that you saying that, because that matches up with our experience when it comes to kind of cross pollination between these two cryptid entities. That hasn't been our experience at all. Again, though, I believe this other person, because the things you said are just, you'd have to be there to know. Like you said, there's the armchair warriors. There's the armchair warriors, and then there's those of us that are out actively doing the deal. You know what I mean? And like I said, the spectrum of people's encounters and experiences are often vastly different. I saw Primal post that's interesting. The originals may fight off the modified Bigfoot Dogman. I believe that there's modification that's been done.
Yeah.
I mean, she may be right. Like I think that they get messed with all the time. David Hollis said they've that they're petrified of the star people, and I've heard that. I live in Arizona. I've heard that from Navajos that say the same thing, that they abduct their children. So that's if that's true, that would possibly indicate that there's some sort of genetic manipulation still going on with these people. I'm not sure, but
Oh yeah, for sure. There is definitely for sure. I can
And I
guarantee
wanted
that.
to bring up Primal Cross said the originals. I guess when I was asking the question about the Bigfoot and Dogman fighting with different tribes or different clans of Bigfoot that may not be on their different properties. She said the originals may fight off the modified Bigfoot and Dogman. So do y'all believe that there's different ones, like based on her comment, do you feel like there's different ones that are created in the labs or these underground military bases or facilities? What are your thoughts on that?
I can guarantee you something. You know that Knox, Tennessee, or something like that. You were doing that. The Dogman attacked people, and they said it was wild dogs. Do you remember that, BMOS?
You talking about in Cotton County, Tennessee, the one last year?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
what? Now you think that was wild dogs?
No, that was government throwback Dogman. There's an article in a channel called Israeli News, and Jessica Jones remote viewed that scenario, and she said it was more like a bear Dogman, and she couldn't figure that out, and it was kind of goofy. But we found this article and we sent it to her, and it made a lot of sense. But according to this guy, there were two Dogmen. These people used to be high up as Navy SEAL people who were offered or took the chance to be genetically modified. And from what I understand, the wild part of the genetics that they were transformed into took over their humanity. So they released them in Tennessee. And that's what that story is all about. And you know what? In my announcement on my Facebook page, you will find that article there.
I'm going to have to go check that out because, Tennessee and Kentucky are hot spots. Alabama is too. And these things are running rampant. And I don't know, like, but you're in Wisconsin. Wisconsin and Michigan are like Bigfoot, Dogman hotspots. And I think in the highly wooded areas, you're going to see a lot more activity with these things running around. They have plenty of natural resources like water, food, wildlife, whatever to basically feed off of. And so I think it's just easy for them to be able to access all these different things. Now, I wanted to ask y'all in the chat, y'all get y'all's questions ready too, because like as we're at an hour, I'm not going to cut it off anytime soon unless he's ready to cut it out. But I'm going to go ahead and get some of you guys' questions in if y'all have questions as well. Put y'all's questions in all caps. But I do want to ask you this because you, other than you, me, Martin Groves, and can't remember what was the guy who this was on Missing 411 The Hunted, and I forgot this guy's name right now. What was his name? Tom Messick. They were talking about this loud metallic sound right before Tom Messick went missing, and there was this loud metallic sound that he heard while he was out in the woods. And now, Tom Messick case, I don't know if that was supposed to be something that was cryptid related or what, but I do know that when Martin Groves had his Dogman and Bigfoot sighting, he had that loud metallic sound. And I also heard that during mine. And you've said you've heard this also. So other than those four situations, I've never heard anybody else talk about that. And it's very loud. It's loud to the point where the best way I always like to describe that, it sounds like you take like a huge train car or like a huge industrial sized metal dumpster that's at like apartments or restaurants or stuff like that, and you take it and you drop it from several thousand feet in the air down onto concrete. That's how loud it is. You talked about that too. What do you think that is?
I believe that some portals can be definitely silent, but when you're dealing with portals, you're talking about energy and transform of energy, opening something, a dimension or whatever it may be. And I believe that's what those sounds are that we hear. I've heard twice out in the woods here sound like someone was dragging a 20-foot square piece of siding off a house, aluminum siding, banging in the trees, just warping for about 20 seconds, and then it's gone. And I heard that twice. So definitely do believe that those. like if you take a big old saw and you wiggle it and it makes that warping sound, and then a crash of metal. Um, it's just like, to me, ours was a crash of metal, warping, crash of metal, warping again.
Mm-hmm. Now it's very disturbing because, like, for me, like, especially like if you're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods, and there's no excuse for it. I understand maybe you could hear certain noises and stuff like that if you're out on the interstate. I mean, stuff can possibly fall off trucks, or I mean, even if there's a crash. But when you're out in the middle of the woods and there's nothing, there's no reason to explain it. There's nothing like that going on in the background around. No reason for it at all, and you're just standing there, and out of nowhere, the most loudest crash or loudest metallic sound that you could possibly hear, like dropping on concrete, that is enough to almost make your soul leave your body. And I have,
Yeah.
Coon, I'm telling you, Dark Woods, when that happened, Coonbo was back there with me at that time. And the crazy part about it, right at that moment, I wanted, because we're getting ready to walk back there into those woods, I wanted to start recording with my phone. And I had a full charge. This is the first time I was like, since we're getting ready to enter these woods, there's no telling what I might capture. So I wanted to start my recorder on the phone. It would not record. It would not let me access the camera to take pictures or anything. And I'm like, what's going on? I didn't understand that. That had never happened before. It's
Well,
really
that's a
weird.
good
And then
information.
have you ever? Go ahead.
That's good information. That's good information, B. If you heard those sounds and you went out right away to try to record them, maybe when they first come into this dimension, they make sure that nothing's going on. You know, they have a protocol where they zap out anyone or anything that has any type of recording or whatever, you know, until they understand the surroundings they're in. It could be.
Well, I was trying to record before we heard that metallic sound, and I wasn't allowed.
Oh, I see.
And so,
Oh,
yeah, this was before that. So whatever was going on, and the crazy part, another thing, I want to say this real quick. Another strange thing about that incident was that right before we heard that metallic sound, we were out there. There's a pond back there, and this all happened on the property where I had all those Dogman sightings. We're standing back there by that pond, looking across the pond, and the hair on my arm stood up. Kumbo turned and looked back at me, and we kind of looked at each other, and he said, "Do you feel that?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's kind of creepy." And as soon as he said that, that's when that crash happened, that metallic crash happened. He said, "Yeah, they don't want us back here. They don't want us back here."
That's what I would think.
Go ahead, Chris.
So up until 3 years ago, we would have a parabolic mic that we would run. This is back when we were still in that let's try and elicit a response type mentality. You know what I mean? And so Kevin would put out a parabolic mic around us, and then at night he would record within his tent. And we used to still do pitch a big 10-man tent, usually two guys and 10 men. You know what I mean? I have a lot of room, a couple cots, whatever. You know, hook it up. And he's got some recordings when he was out solo, when we've all been out, that have metallic clicks, metallic bangs, things that just there's no physical explanation for them, for what's there, you know. He's gotten speaking, language, a lot of really, really unique things, but definitely the metallic sound too. You know, he's got this one where he's asleep and you hear a metal click. It's like I don't know. It's like somebody banged two pieces of rebar together, right? But maybe a little bit more resonant than that. I have a copy of the disc, and because it's all years of it on it, you know what I mean? Like we got a ton of it, and then a really sharp voice says "Hitatsu" like that, like speaks, which we tried to send to Navajo and Apaches to try and find out if that was native, which we never got an answer for. They couldn't identify what the language was, but it was almost like a kid had picked something up or done something and he was being admonished by by a parent or an adult right within the tent. This was, I mean, that's what
Wow.
so yeah, I've heard a lot of strange audio phenomenon as well. When back, like I said, like I've got hours of years of these recordings. Some of them are pretty impressive, a lot of language, a lot of strange talk, but then different metallic sounds too. So that's definitely part of the phenomenon, man. And it's all interconnected, whether it's a 411. I mean, who knows what that is? It sounded like the guy said, I remember in the movie, he said it sounded like a bear trap, or it sounded like something clanging shut or clanging open.
Yeah.
And the son of the older hunter father who'd been sitting on a stump, he was like 80 years old. It wasn't like he was trekking off anywhere, you know what I mean? And they left him on a stump. You can sit here, and there'll be another guy, the other old guy on a stump, 80 yards from you. And then there was a line of them, and the younger hunters were beating deer down towards them. You know what I mean? So it's not like the guy got up and went anywhere. So
I want to take a question. I want to take a question real quick. Shade Viking said, does anybody ever find Dogman dens and tunnels? That I'll leave that question to you there, Dark Woods. What do you feel about that? Have you found that? Dogman dens or tunnels?
Yeah, we've never found any kind of dens. I know bears even make dens out here, and I suspect one black bear relatively does a den back this way, but I've never found it. I can imagine that they do, and they do also. It'd be smarter to have one tunnel, I would imagine, But yeah, we haven't seen that. I haven't explored super deep into some really remote areas, which are really close to the house. Definitely want to, but I'd like to have another person with, especially when you're dealing with portals. But for the most part, we have a lot of the activities around here, and that's where I get most of my research from.
And on my part, to answer that question, I have found what I thought to be a Dogman den or nest on that property that I've mentioned before. I went back there in October of last year to that property. My parents no longer live there, but I found a huge mound back there with 2 large holes on top of it. Those 2 large holes could be anything. I'm not sure exactly what they are. It could be just regular fox den. I have absolutely no idea, but I can say that there were 2 large holes on top of that. Some of them, I feel, as far as Dogman and Bigfoot are concerned, I feel like some of them probably live in caves and live underground. There's no telling. And if you want to look at it, I also know that Dogmen are often spotted as well in trees. So that's another thing. And I don't know if they make nests in trees, but I know that they're up there often. I know their pups are in the trees. There's plenty of pictures with that in it. Sugay said maybe the EMF of our devices interferes with their frequency and ability to access portals. I feel like that our devices and phones and stuff like that interfere with their ability to completely cloak to the point where you can't see them. Like when you can't see them with the naked eye, you pick up your phone and take pictures of them. I feel like that your phone is still able to pick them up, which I like to call the predator effect, where you can still see their outline. And I actually also believe, and I might be completely wrong, this is just my own opinion, everybody else might have y'all's own theories about it, but I also think that some of those tree structures are also created in order to what do you call it, like a ground blind or whatever, but they also need, I think if there's an open area sometimes, I think that they need those in order to have a background behind them in order to camouflage into. What do you think about that, Dark Woods?
Well, you know what? I have photographic evidence that really doesn't matter. I was walking back through here when I was up here on vacation. I went down a trail to get to the river, and it's thick woods, and there's an opening where there's a bunch of ferns that were like 4 feet tall. They're huge. There's a big grove, and I thought that was really neat. So I went through the forest trail into the fern grove, went through the entire fern grove, and I turned around and I bent down to take a photo of it. And later on, I was looking at the photo, and I noticed I could see a canine ear and another one, the top of a head only, and one eye socket. And I was looking at that, and I was trying to figure out what the heck it was. But you could see a blurred image of the body, and it was a Dogman that was actually following me down the trail to the river. And where I took a photo of it was where I just came out of the woods because it was following me. I had no clue. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even feel it. I couldn't hear it. Nothing. It was silent. But you could see in the photo that it's 95% cloaked. I must have turned around and caught it before it was fully cloaked. But you could see the physical top part of its head, and then the rest of the body was exactly like the background camouflage, the foliage and the trees and things in the background,
Yeah.
but it was in an open area on an open trail. So it was able to mimic what it was behind it to look like it was part of that. But I drew an outline where you can see the body, and even with the
Mm-hmm.
without the outline, you can definitely see the body of it. But I have that photo
I
in the
know
group as
exactly.
well.
Yeah, I know
Yeah, you've seen
exactly
that.
what you're talking about. Chris, did you want to chime in? Did you have any questions? Let me see.
No,
Okay.
I'm enjoying listening to. Well, I know your real name. I'm not supposed to say it, so I'll just go with Dark. uh, I
Dark.
What do you think is my real name?
uh
What do you think is my real name?
Steven. Or you go by something else too. I don't know. You might have a couple nom de plumes.
I have thousands of
That's
names.
from.
But yeah, Steven Seagal is the Facebook name for sure.
That's the one I'm familiar with.
Yep. Are
No,
you part of a?
I'm
Are you?
listening to you because I'm listening for commonalities, man. You know what I mean? That to
Yeah,
me is
yeah.
that's I dig that. I don't need any validity ever. You know what I mean? I just don't
Yeah.
need it. I could give a shit about pictures and video and evidence. Days
Hmm.
that ship's sailed, man. I could care less, but I love to hear the experience. You know what I mean? That's what I dig.
Well,
That's what
you have a lot of commonality too, from what I've heard, and that's really great. I can associate with the things that you experience compared to what we've experienced here. But I'm about to put you on a whole different level here. So I wonder if you had this kind of an experience. Remember, I was telling you about the group that I met with the Dogman and the Sasquatch and the other Dogmen in that
Yeah.
group of trees. So
Mm-hmm.
I told you I pretend like I didn't see them and I tried to get as close as I could. I prized myself on this because I went and looked for a landmark structure, certain ways trees were to make a reference. So I knew exactly where to look the next day because I wanted to look for tracks. So the next day I went back there. I could not find anything that had to do with those woods back there. The landmark references weren't there. None of those woods. I even brought my cell phone with the photo, and I know exactly where I saw it, where I stood to take the photo, and I was standing right there. And I looked. Those woods don't exist. The structure of the woods that are there are completely different than what I took in that photo. So I come to the conclusion that those four forest people and the section of woods around them portaled in here into these woods. And when B. Moss was looking at the photos, there's some really weird faces in the photos. I counted over 36 faces. There's tree stumps that are carved out that have noses, that have eyes and mouths that don't even exist back there. There's faces on trees that look really weird and they don't exist back there. There's even what looks like a ceramic mask that you would wear that's laying on the ground that has
Yeah.
weird effects on it. And I think those are aspects, some characteristics possibly, of what an alternate reality adjacent to ours is like. Because I seen a video of a lady who went into a portal on some national forest. She was with a couple of friends, and they're all walking, and all of a sudden, their friends disappeared. And she was like, "Where did they go?" And she realized that she was kind of lost on this trail, And she noticed while she kept walking on this trail that there were lakes and streams that weren't there because she knows that area. So there was something different going on. And she panicked and freaked out and whatnot. But eventually she got to the end of wherever she was walking and she was able to come out of that portal. Thank God. But later on, and she found some house where she can get help. And then she eventually was able to reunite with her friends. But her friends said that, yeah, she was walking right next to us and she disappeared. And the lady that disappeared, she could see her friend's footprints and they stopped and she was by herself. So,
Wow.
I mean, yeah, that's really, it's one of the few videos I ever seen where someone actually was in there. And I didn't see it in the video, but she kept saying there is some humanoid thing that was running parallel with her in the woods and it had an orange face and it was freaking her out. And she had a 357 Magnum and she ended up taking a shot at it a couple of times. You know, it didn't sound like she did anything to it, but it apparently was still following her around. So she was totally in distress by the time she was able to get out of there. And that was really interesting to me when I saw that. So there's so much things in this world that we have no clue about, and we're just scratching the surface. It's awesome that we're able to, do shows like this and where people get together and we can discuss things that we have seen or we know, and we can compile it all together to get maybe to put this puzzle pieces all together to create a picture of the truth of what's going on.
Because it has to get beyond entertainment purposes.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then
I think that there's multiple. I think there's a lot of different things going on at the same time. For a bunch of reasons. When back when I was still time stamping and doing things, I can remember Mark posting this video of a new spot way up in the high elevation up in Colorado. And I mean, there was this beautiful pine / aspen forest and, really natural environment. And there was a clump of small shrubs underneath a pine. And there's another guy that has the exact same name as me in the only Facebook group that I really kind of mess around with. And he's a big time stamper. And he time stamped a photo in these shrubs. And I've seen this in other photos. This was a picture of a bald, human-looking creature with this biotech. And I mean, not just like, it was like metal wrapping around and planted into its head. It was a sideshow. So it was like teeth were showing, and it had like this almost like a black leather kind of tunic on. And it was like it was coming up out of the ground in the shrubs. But again, to your point, like a lot of times I think for whatever reason, and I've always believed it, I know Mark Abel believes this, that they play tricks with your minds, and it may not be the South. It could be some other entity that's out there. That's where you start breaking down the dimensional rabbit hole, whatever. And they're able to. It's beyond cloaking. These are like casting illusions in your head. I've been out with Mark one time with him, November 2 years ago, and we're looking over the side of a giant cliff, and there's a rock wall behind us, and there is, when we get back and he starts reviewing his film, there's a shadow being holding a staff, sitting on the ledge with like horns like this, and it's a completely black, but its entire figure is completely discernible. And we were right next to this. I mean, literally within 8 feet of it, and had no idea. I mean, our eyes just passed right over it and right back. And that's happened after I figured that out all the time. The camera picks up something that we don't have the visual.
That is very true.
I guess, Chris, we can't hear you. You muted your mic or something. We can't hear you, cut out. But now I want to ask real quick, Dark Woods, since you've been out there in the woods, have you ever seen what they call the rake or the crawler?
Thank God, no. That is something I definitely do not want to experience, but I would not be surprised if it was out here because there's some things that I've seen out here that I just have no reference for.
Mm-hmm. Now they say that they're pretty
Matter of
bad.
fact,
Dogmen have actually fought them, and they're more vicious than dogmen. They've killed
yeah,
them.
well, yeah, they're bad news. They're hard to kill. Some people call them what's considered back in ancient times called a ghoul. So I'm not really sure if there's a connection there with that. You never know. These things could have been around forever.
It looks like you got some eye shine in the background behind you, off and on. I don't know if that's a light in the background or what back there flashing. Do you see?
This
It's
is
something that.
not uncommon. This definitely happens a lot. When I did that show at Truth and Bass, people are seeing eye shine and things moving back all the
It
time.
is. I mean,
Actually,
yeah.
actually, when I did that show with them, right here on this log pile, there was a baby dogman that crawled up right behind me here during right after the show when I was talking to Bass backstage.
I remember that. Didn't you share that in your group? I
Yeah, I
remember that.
did. So that's really important information, Chris. I don't know if you know this, but Primal Cry was out here because we always have protocols if because weird things were going on during that show. She came out and took a bunch of photos. I have to give her massive credit because she's the only person who caught a photo of a baby dog man. These pieces of wood are about 4 inches wide and its head was smaller, so it was really small. But its eyes were huge. And when we looked at the photograph, the eyes were just jet black. There is no white or nothing in them. And I thought, what the heck? That's like a soulless eye. And it took me a while, but I was listening to one of Patina's shows with a guy named
Mm-hmm.
Mark that was on there. And he talked about how he encountered a dog man who had these third eyelids that came up from the bottom and they were jet black. And I was like, oh my God. So we have, as far as I know, the only photographic evidence of those black eye shields coming up on Dogman. And right now I have a 4-foot light bar that I have hung out here for lighting. I had the same thing going on before. And I believe that it had those eye shields down because of that lighting. And then because this is actual fact, Jeremiah Fountain encountered a Bigfoot that had the same scenario with the eyelids. And if you think about deer and stuff, like if you shoot a deer when you're hunting, if you shine a light in its eyes, you'll see scratches and stuff in its eyes from running through the woods and things. I can imagine those eye shields would help protect their eyes from stuff like that since they live in the woods. But secondly, this goes to show if you're out with a flashlight or some kind of light and you're looking for eye shine, if they have those eyelids up, you're not going to see the eye shine, and they could be right there.
And real quick, because I took that comment off, but you don't have anybody back there in the background shining a flashlight, do you? Back in the woods.
No, I just now did. There's no one out here. Did you see someone shining a light?
I know you don't. No, well that eye shine that I seen back there that I mentioned, I thought it was eye shine, and then Shade Viking said it's somebody shining a flashlight, and I wanted to address Shade Viking because Shade Viking came in late or not, but Primal Cry and Dark Woods, they live like 40 miles outside of town. Like there's no,
Hey, Patina.
There's no other people around them. There's no other neighbors around. There's nobody out there.
I think something's going on. Hold on 1 second. I got to check something out.
Okay, yeah, take your time. Yeah, y'all, like he has regular activity on his property on a regular basis, so this is not like an isolated incident. He has stuff like this going on a regular. I try, like I said before, I tried to upload the pictures. If he gives me permission after the show, y'all y'all can check them out in my group, but I'll ask and check with him, make sure it's okay to share them in the group. But you can also check out the pictures also in his group, Primal Cry in the Dark Woods is the name of his Facebook group. If you want to check those pictures out there. I'm gonna put this comment on the screen while he's. Suge said, "I heard a dogman sighting where a hunter saw a couple of them watching a crawler across the field. One dogman mind spoke to him. We are not your enemy. That is your enemy." Anyone else hear that one? I think I did hear that before, and I've heard that they were pretty much the dogman from what I've heard. But I don't know, like the dogman I've encountered, they just watch from a distance. Did y'all have anything y'all wanted to say before I continue to take questions? Either one of you, Chris or Dark Woods?
Okay.
I got enough. I have not.
Did you call me?
Wendy Gwizdala said, well, okay, let me see.
You call me.
Does anyone think that the dogman eyes that are a different color, they come from different places? I've always wondered about that. So my thoughts on the dogman eyes that are a different color, they come from different places. I don't know if I think that they come from different places. Me personally, I think that different dogmen, I think that there's different ones. I think that they have different eye colors, different coat colors, different sizes, different types. Not all of them look like black wolves or German shepherds or Nubis. There's types that look more like a Rottweiler or a pit bull with a broad head, crop type ears. They're not all the same. There's some that they say that have human type legs. So most of the time when it comes to encounters, you'll hear people talk about the ones that have the amber eyes, but the one I saw in my first encounter didn't have amber eyes. It had blue eyes. And then there's ones that have black eyes. So there's a lot of different stuff. Now, in his background right now, he has, there's eye shine on back there. And y'all just heard him say, like, during one of the shows he was doing, a dogman pup came up behind him, and I've had that happen just doing regular video at home recording, and they were in a cloak type state, and I heard all the audio behind that. But what are y'all's thoughts on the different eye colors? Do you think that they're from places, or do y'all think just like kind of like I do, there's just different types?
Yeah, there's different. They're just like people. There's different types for sure. Just now, a situation that occurred, I heard someone calling my name. It sounded just like Primal Cry, but it wasn't her. So the forest people are out here watching us.
And I've heard that a lot of the times too, where people talk about they're able to mimic voices or baby crying and different voices, and they're trying to lure people into the. Is that nefarious? Would you say that that's sinister to try to trick people to come out there? Is that like what they say the Wendigo does that, or what do you think about that? Because that's strange to me.
You know, it does seem nefarious, but I've heard one story where someone heard like a baby crying, and they went out in the woods, and they obviously didn't have a good enough flashlight because wasn't working too well. But out in the middle of the woods, they all of a sudden realized they were surrounded by several dogmen, and they didn't hurt him or anything. He flipped out and cautiously walked out of there, but they didn't pursue him or anything like that. So I think
noise to attract other predators. Like if you make a crying infant sound, yotes or something like that will come, to investigate. Maybe they're hunting those, but apparently they didn't want nothing to do with that person.
Absolutely, and it's not lights from a car shining on a metal fence. They do not live near the highway or the road. They are deep, several miles into the woods. No houses, no roads, nothing like that nearby. None of that. So they're not on an access road. That's not what's going on. And I think a lot of times it's hard for people to. Yeah.
No, just on the eye luminescence phenomenon, I got a little bit to contribute there. It may be helpful to somebody, it may not be. So Kevin, a couple years ago, had interaction with a forest person that we nicknamed Mr. Miyagi. And That was his nickname. He was an older guy, kind of like the Fu Manchu going on a little bit. That was the projection. And Kevin asked him specifically about different color eyes and different color orbs. And he came back with a question: why are your eyes green, and why are some people's blue, and why are some people's brown? You know, and how do we do it? And the answer was, how do you breathe? Like, it's a natural occurring phenomenon for them. It's part of their biology. It's just how they act, and the different colors. I've heard so many different theories. Oh, if it's red, it's sinister and evil, and if it's a golden color, then they're friendly. I don't know that to be true. We can only go by what we've been told and what we've said, and I think that sometimes we want to read maybe a spiritual significance to it, or put a spiritual significance to it, or a mood significance to it, that I don't believe that with who we're dealing with, where we are, is the case. So again, take that for what it's worth. I don't know that is applicable to every situation, but it certainly seems to be applicable to us, and it's something that they can control. They can luminesce their eyes at will, as quickly or as shortly as they would like to do so. It's not eye shine, because eye shine would be like a cat pissing in your backyard, and it caught, you see it from the porch, and it catches the porch light on. That's eye shine. This is luminesce. It's from within them. It's an energy that they can project somehow through their eyes. That's what I believe. That's what I've seen.
I've seen that once before. Primal Cry and I were coming home during a snowstorm, and like I said, the river is right behind the house, but you got to cross a bridge to get over the river before you get to the house. And outside of the headlight beams, way up in the tree, I saw two almond-shaped, blood ruby red eyes just glowing about 50 feet up in the tree. Some of these white pines are over 100 feet tall. That happened to be right on the river bank. So I think it was out there hunting things, drop down on prey or whatever. But I definitely seen it. I never seen nothing like it before. You will never mistake it for anything else. But it definitely illuminated on its own.
Let me see. I'm taking people's questions right now.
I don't find anything about that speculative or lazy, incidentally, as I'm just reading a comment on there. I put Dark or Patina, or quite frankly myself, boots on the ground up there with probably anybody else. There's nothing lazy about it. So
right,
take that for what it's worth, brother.
Yep. And
and I don't believe that the different eye colors have anything to do with mood either.
True.
Go ahead, Dark.
Well, the other thing too is, we live in a worldly world, and you have Hollywood and movies, and people watch all that stuff all the time. And it's kind of funny because I see it happen a lot of times where people think things are like Hollywood, and it's completely different, Just like you were mentioning about Stargate earlier, the portals aren't like Stargates. I'm sure there are Stargates out there, but more so, when you get people who don't know anything and they know things they see or watch on TV, they kind of correlate it with that. And that's where you really get some misconceptions in this field.
Mm-hmm.
That's the danger.
Absolutely.
When we get into this topic, is that, and it's understandable, but I would believe that 80% of the people that have an interest in this are getting or regurgitating things that they've heard on podcasts or other platforms or coast to coast or whatever it is. And, that's not critical thought. That's an established paradigm that you're just parroting somebody else. You know what I mean? And I'm sure I was guilty of that at some point in my life, of, taking other people's work or other people's, experiences and then, incorporating that into my belief system. You know what I mean? And I make an effort not to do that anymore. So I don't watch a lot of other shows. I don't pay attention to too many other researchers, other than when I get a good vibe. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm going to discover some commonalities for what I've experienced and what we've been going through. You know, so you know what. Anybody that isn't out there doing it, you know, this we can all speculate. We can all, and I continue to speculate. But at the end of the day, even what we're doing is 90% speculation.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's watching it. You know what I mean? That's being there. You know.
That's true. So, Chris, what state do you live in?
I live in Arizona.
Oh, wow. So you had a lot of encounters out there as well.
Well, you know, when people think about Arizona, they think about cactus and desert. I live in the mountains, and we kind of inherited a research spot from a man by the name of Mitch Waite, who he actually had a YouTube channel called the Mogollon Monster, and this guy spent decades at a couple different locations, obsessed with validating what he'd done with his life, and it was all about photography, but. He had a lot of activity going on there, and when he passed away, we had two of the older guys that I go out with knew him fairly well, and he broke down where he was going, and we've continued it there for the last 7 years. You know, so yeah, it's been and he, you know, it's a couple different places. If you're familiar with Arizona, there's a smaller canyon called the Mogollon Rim, which is huge. It runs east to west, south of the Grand Canyon, and it's located with 3 different national forests: Coconino National Forest, Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, and Tonto National Forest. It is huge. It's where Travis Walton had his abduction. It's literally within 15 miles, one of our spots of where he was taken. Yeah, and so you know, a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of activity, and a lot of things learned in the last 7 years. You know, really fantastic.
That's a great spot. I would have never known anything would happen up here, but apparently it does. You know,
you're near the Upper Peninsula, man. That's like the Dogman capital of the world. You know, that's what they tell me. You know, yeah, that's where I hear the most encounters coming from, is up in that area. And my first Sasquatch experience was in Wisconsin. So I mean, and I only lived there for a year or two. You know, just that was how it went down.
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing about these woods is I discovered that there is Sasquatch and Dogman. I definitely have plenty of evidence of that. But there are also a bunch of weird things up here as well. And I think things that I would consider fae. At the end of the logging road, when I come down my driveway, you could see down the logging road before I turned up to the house. And I came home from work one day, and this was after about 4 weeks, the hummingbirds migrated out of here because they do that every fall. Well, when I came in the driveway, there was something that looked like a hummingbird, but it had a 2-foot wingspan. It's 1 foot on each side. And the body was like 10 or 12 inches long, and it looked like a shriveled up cucumber. And it was flying around in front of my game cam that I thought, you know. I'm like, what the hell is that thing? You know, it was buzzing up and down like a hummingbird, and then it just went, it took off deep into the woods. And I thought I had that on my game show cam, but apparently it was off to the side of it, and I think it was checking it out. But I've never seen nothing like that. It's just weird.
Again, it comes down to multiple things going on, multiple entities, multiple possible agendas. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there, you know? I mean, when you look back, that's where I love to go back to like Irish folklore or Norse mythology, and you look at some of these, you know, that were named, you know, elves or dwarves or trolls or whatever it is, you know. But I still believe that in every one of these folklores, it's rooted in some truth and rooted in. You know, what do people just like turn into J.R. Tolkien? The guy's a freaking sheep farmer, and all of a sudden, you know, he's busting out, you know, giving names and encounter stories back, you know, 600 years ago. No, something happened. Something happened. They saw something, you know. I mean, how can it's not fantasy, you know? That's the thing. That's what we're taught to believe. We're taught to believe that folklore and mythology, or we're all just, you know, the most educated thing is, oh, there are allegorical symbols of man's duality. No. there's some factual evidence. It's some piece of fact is in there. Maybe it's been exaggerated over time or whatever, but the reality is there's a grain of truth in all of it. I believe that 100%.
You know those folklores, when people today read about them, they look at them, well, they might not know what they're talking about, or it's just a fantasy or imagination or a myth, because today we are very technical and we're wise. But that's not the case. We're just as illiterate on what's going on in the world as they were, and they seen things and they recorded it. But after hundreds of years, we read it and it's like, oh, well, they were just fantasy thinking, But who's to say that wasn't the truth?
That's exactly, I mean, yeah, and there's so many different. When you start looking at some of the entities that I've captured on film back in the day, when we're panning the wood line or out there, and I mean, we may be out there looking for forest people, but there's a lot of other strange stuff that's starting to show up in those things. You know what I mean? Like, some of them look like, literally like classic. It was taken right out of some Norse tale. You know what I mean? Just really, really, dwarves and Mark Abel's got a photo of a video of a leprechaun peering out. I don't know what else to call it. It looks like a leprechaun holding a wooden stick, looking around the side of a stump. I mean, it's not pareidolia. You can see it clear as day. And I'm thinking, he calls it, the leprechaun. What else are you going to call it? I mean,
right. That's amazing.
And, but I mean,
it's good to hear that, because it doesn't make me feel like I'm losing my mind when I see some of these weird things that has no category for,
Right. Or it's a really old category,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, like 20 feet over this way, we have wolves up here, slate gray and some black wolves. They're big enough you could put a saddle on them and ride them around. Their footprints is almost as big as a $20 bill long. They're huge. And we had some coming up in the backyard, and we had a dog. So every time I go outside, I'd hit the flashlight and I'd scan down below to make sure I didn't see any wolf eye shines, because I've done that several times,
Right.
But this one night I was out in the driveway and I was scanning through the woods, and I went back and forth, side to side. And then for some reason, instinctively, I just went straight up, and my headlamp stopped right on an eyeball in the tree. The eyeball, let's see, it had to be about this long and about that thick, and it was one eye. My headlamp was on it. It had zero eye shine. It was a flat eye, like if you looked at a human eye. The white of the eye was yellow, like if you took an egg yolk and it was in a black skillet. It had yellow and some dark blackness in it, and then the pupil was solid black, and I couldn't see ahead, because when you shine a light in the trees up here, you see a lot of black background. The eye was floating in a black background, so you couldn't see its head. But I could tell it had a head, because we stared at each other for about 30 seconds. And then I seen the eye move this way. And then you could tell that the head turned, because the eye shrunk when it did. And then it disappeared. No sound, nothing. An eye to be that big up in a tree and then disappears, you would hear it leave. Even leaving off the bark on the tree, you would hear it. Because I was about 20 feet away from it. And I don't know what the heck that was, but it stared down at me. It didn't seem like it looked through my soul, but I could tell it was looking into me. And I didn't feel anything weird from it or anything. I just was in awe when I saw it. And then it looked at me nonchalantly, and then it turned its eye and then its head, and it disappeared, like it was checking me out for some reason. I don't know what the heck that was. There's nothing in my data that tells me that it's anything. So, and the way it disappeared, there's no footprints, no bark disturbance, nothing.
What I wanted to say real quick. and then we can wrap it up here soon. But what I wanted to say real quick is that, like, based on, to me, based on the fact of just seeing or knowing that Dogman and Bigfoot exist, to me at this point, there's nothing. I'm open minded enough to feel like there's no telling what's out there. We were told like monsters don't exist. And when I say monsters, I'm using that word loosely. Like some people might say, well, you call them monsters, but they're the friendly forest people. I'm just using that because as far as movies and Hollywood is concerned, we would call them monsters because Dogman looks like a werewolf. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that all dogmen or wolf people or whatever you call them. I'm not saying that they're all bad because I don't know. Like I'm not like the expert or the authority on this. I'm just saying that we're told monsters don't exist. Like in the days of old, like you may have looked, some people may have called Bigfoot back then the ogre, like the ogres that were under the bridge, like they were tall, hairy, humanoid type figures or creatures, whatever you want to call it. You had leprechauns, you had all these different things, gnomes. So when you look at the little people, is that gnomes of old? Is that like elves? And when you watch what is it? Not Harry Potter, but what's that other show? What is that other movie that not The Hobbit, but The Hobbit was a derivative movie off. Let me unmute because Chris might know this. It was
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, elves, fairies, all that kind of stuff. Do y'all think? I mean, is that Gandalf?
I got Gandalf tattooed on my arm.
Oh, no way.
I was shit faced.
So,
That's a long time
they
ago.
tell y'all. They tell you what you see in Hollywood movies. That's them really telling you what's really going on in the world. And then Cabin in the Woods, I bring that up all the time. Y'all watch Cabin in the Woods. I don't know if y'all can find that on Netflix. Google it and find out where you can watch it. Cabin in the Woods. That's all day, every day, telling you that there's underground facilities where they're creating these hybrids and creatures and they're feeding them, breeding them, and possibly, like, if you just look at the national parks, and like I said, nothing, y'all take everything I say. Some stuff is theories and some stuff is my opinion and all that kind of stuff, and some stuff is just based on my experiences. But I come up with theories based on what's going on, based on what you see in movies, based on listening to several people's encounters, experiences, and all that kind of stuff, and then the cover-ups. If all these things all go together and y'all take all this stuff and you put the common denominators together, listening to several different encounters and shows that you listen to, then we should be able to come to some conclusions. And then when you get shows like the one I had with Scott Carpenter, him talking about the DNA evidence that was that he was doing, the DNA research, which was part human, part animal, and part unknown, was also the exact same research. He was working with Melba Ketchum on that, and she was discredited. So when you look at that, and she was discredited, and then even today she does not want to do any interviews. I don't know if she still does or whatnot, but from what Scott was saying, I believe, here you go. It's acting crazy. It's starting up now. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna shut up. I don't want nothing to happen tonight. So here we go. Here we go. All night we were fine before I said anything.
It follows him around, man. Let's keep his name off the books.
I ain't gonna mention their names again. Y'all heard what I just said. So what y'all just take that what I said. What? So when it comes down to certain stuff, they don't want you talking about it. Here we go.
Yeah.
Chris, talk about it. I ain't gonna talk about it. You talk about it. They hear me. I guess they.
Chris. I mean, we had this happen last week with a great guest on. Where what happened. We all got kicked out. I got shut out of my phone, my home Wi-Fi, everything. I think there's got to be some algorithm set in when you hit trigger words, trigger keywords, trigger names. It just kind of sets something off. It's either that or some sort of weird spiritual influence. I don't know what it is. I just know that it's a phenomenon, that it happens. And I've got great Wi-Fi. I know Bettina does, and I've got multiple sources, and yet I was completely shut down. So. I mean, completely. I couldn't make a phone call for friggin' 6 hours.
I have interference from the forest people right now because both my earbuds totally are drained. And surprised the phone's not drained. But I think because those are drained, the phone volume is going, so now they can hear you.
And I understand exactly. There's certain things that I prefer not to talk about out loud too, because I think that in my mind, I feel like certain stuff, like how people, the Native American culture, they refuse to talk about the SWs, and y'all know what that stands for, because they feel like talking about it gives it energy and kind of, for lack of a better word, conjures them up. And I don't like to talk about certain stuff because it gets scary. So what I wanted to say, go ahead.
I thought you said you wanted to do an experiment and see if we can get the channel shut down.
I don't want to. I don't want to get the channel shut down. But you wanted to do a test. What's the test? Go ahead. I'm ready for this. He gonna do a test, like, because the show with Scott, the show with Lance Hightower, and if whatever test that he's planning on or wanting to do right now, if it's what he thinks is gonna happen, is gonna stop that. Stop it. No. I'm sorry, y'all. She's hard headed. If if whatever, let's do the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because we announced that, maybe they won't shut it off, but who knows? But whatever the case is, there are a lot of things in this world we don't understand and that we don't know. And I've heard so many times the topic of Nephilim being brought up, and one of the things to note is the cattle mutilations and how that stuff is going on, how all those parts are surgically removed, precise and exact, and all the blood's gone and everything else. Back in the day, when the fallen mated with the human females to create hybrids, which are called Nephilim, the giants, I believe that they're doing that now through certain ETs, where they're getting all these reproductive parts. There's been sperm whales found 28 times in the center of Africa out of the ocean, just dropped out of the sky. Reproductive organs gone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I believe that they're doing the same thing they did back in the day, but they're not physically mating with the human females, that they're actually using, because they're taking sperm and eggs from humans. And I believe they're creating their own hybrids right now. I've heard
it's a little late in the night to start driving down this friggin' highway. However,
no, it's not. No, it's not. I want to hear it.
I will parrot L.A. Marzulli on this because he might be onto something.
Yeah.
Well, we need to get in touch with L.A. Marzulli, but I want to hear this.
LA says what he believes is that because the fallen and the Nephilim were slain, that the gray alien and majority of the alien entities are biological constructs to house the spirits of these slain entities. So it's a crossover, and there is definitely some sort of thread winding through ufology and the cryptid stuff. They're just is, So that, if you go down that road, and I'm not saying that's what it is, because I don't know, I mean, that's a really great concept if you want to put a brick wall up around the Bible and are taking a biblical approach and a biblical creationism approach to this. That checks another box, it absolutely does, because then it would allow them to continue doing some sort of genetic manipulation, research, crossbreeding, hybridization, whatever those things are that's going on with these mutilations, or taking these samples, or for whatever they're needed for. You could tie it back into the Nephilim construct as well. You know what I mean? Again, speculation. Absolutely.
Well, history has a tendency to repeat itself, and that's what I think we see going on. I don't
know that this has ever stopped.
Yeah,
I know. You can go down to South America, Central America, and see a lot of this, especially in their own spiritual beliefs and their cultural practices, that would indicate that some of these practices have never stopped. So
yeah.
I'll be there in May. I'll be down at the ruins in north of Tulum for a week. Yeah,
That's gonna be awesome.
Linda thinks we're going on our honeymoon, but it's really just a chance for me to research.
Nice.
Well, I wanted to bring up what you was just talking about a few minutes ago about the sperm whales being dropped from up in the air. Like, so there,
Crazy.
I hear about the cattle mutilations and the cattle being abducted, and then also not only that, but also the different things when it comes to, and I can't say this is Bigfoot or Dogman. There's other stuff out there too, from what I've heard in these woods, but in some of these killings of wildlife that are out there, they'll be found a lot of the times with the organs missing or completely drained of blood. And they say that other animals will not touch it. They won't feed off
Gotcha.
of it. They won't come around it at all. Then you got stories of what is it, deer and other animals, well, mostly deer from what I've heard of, like with their head completely turned backwards. Or I seen a picture, I don't know, somebody shared this in the group because I made a post in the group, and I'd asked people in the group if they had ever heard of bears being brought out of hibernation and with their heads ripped off or anything like that. And so I know that's graphic, but some people were sharing different stuff, and they were sharing different pictures that they had seen, like different stuff. And there was a deer that somebody had shared, and it looked like it wasn't just like where his head was turned backwards. It looked like the way if you took like a big dry off towel and you wring it around several times. The deer's neck was like that, like it had been turned around 3 or 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So when you see that, no human can do that. I mean, I can't see a human being able to do that. I've never heard of any other animal doing anything like that. And the crazy part about it is that the deer was not even fed off of.
Right.
So when you look at all this stuff, you got to look at it, and you got to think about like all the different stories. And you got park rangers and other wildlife officials or whatever, DNR and stuff like that, Fish and Wildlife, where these people are out there in the woods. I think that they have already been preempted to not talk about this stuff. I think that they already know that these things exist, and I think that there's a protocol for that, and they've been told when this comes out, what you say, and this is how you cover it up. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you what.
You-
Do you know the reason? Do you know the reason why the animals don't interfere with that mutilated body? It's
Why is that?
because there's an energy signature in the ground where that body is at, and you can measure it on the outskirts, around the outside of where the body is. It's faint, but in the center, it spikes. And that energy signature can last 20 years on that ground, whether the animal is there or not.
Oh,
It's
wow.
been recorded 20 years later. Yep. So whatever it was that did that to it had some high technology or left a signature of their presence, I guess, where flies don't even land on those carcasses. So that's definitely supernatural.
Okay, let me see. Y'all, we're at 2 hours, and I'm not going to hold Dark Woods all night. I'm just
Dude,
trying
I
to
want
check here
to
real
eat
quick
dinner.
and see. Chris,
It's still early
huh?
here. I said I
Shit,
gotta
we can
eat
hang
dinner.
out in the
It's
Oh,
still
you
early
want to
here.
keep going?
No,
You know
I'm
what?
ready.
Dark Woods.
But
No. Oh, you want to keep going, Chris? Dark Woods, you want to keep going?
This is my home.
Well, Chris, did you want to keep going too?
I'll go for a little while longer until my
Yeah.
All right,
stomach
Chris.
starts to overtake my voice.
I'm gonna take a 5 minute. I'm gonna take a 5 minute break. I'm gonna take a
Oh,
5 minute
that's
break.
how it is. You guys will keep putting smoking out of here.
It's cigarette break time since y'all want to. Okay, yeah, keep going because there's more questions. And Chris, if you can see the comments, then you keep taking comments and questions. And y'all keep talking. I will be back in 5 minutes. 5
Sounds good.
minutes.
I'm looking at the comments trying to find one that I mean they're all good. They all have validity.
Y'all put y'all's comments in all caps for Chris to see, please.
Yeah, I don't have my chat up.
No, I got it. I got it up. I got the co-host chat going. I guess I'm gonna piggyback off of Patina. You know, you want to get some real great information. You know, you talk to the loggers. I mean, for when it comes to seeing, I mean, you know, hunters, like real deep guided hunters way up in the boonies, you know what I mean? Like, and it could be anywhere, but usually it seems like the more really bizarre things happen. I've heard just boatloads of stories, you know, even following Steve Ishtal or some of the other guys that I think have some validity to them, you know. we have a woman that contacted us about 3 years ago, and she worked for the Forest Service for 30 years, and she she worked in Arizona, but out in Apache Sitgreaves and Coconino, like way out, man. The outpost where she'd have to be stationed for a couple of days. She's had some of the most amazing. She owns a small ranch near Sholo, and in Arizona, which is in the mountains in elevation, beautiful lakes and pines, whatever. And
Nice.
with a bunch of horses and other livestock. And she still worked for the Forest Service part-time. So I've told this story before, but it bears repeating because she's had some amazing stuff. She started getting a lot of strange activity around her farm. Like her chickens were getting killed, all this, stuff that you hear that happens sometimes when clans are on your property. So she one of the guys that I work with is, believe it or not, this guy was a BFRO researcher for a long time and had it out with Mr. M because he wasn't towing the company line, and so he it is what it is. But she reached out to him, and so him and Kevin went up there and did a sit out for 2 nights in a row, and they got some pretty crazy activity and they got some mind speak. And long story short, this woman started to realize she had an affinity for mind speak. And this lady did not have a dog in the race. And she didn't know anything about this stuff to begin with. And all of a sudden, she's right in it. They kind of get the situation calmed down. So she goes away last year, 2 years ago. And this is how the portal story came in. And so she hired this woman. She has a trailer on her property. She hired this woman to feed her animals and to babysit the ranch while she's gone because she's out on the road for a couple of days out and doing forest work, whatever the hell they do. And so the woman is taking pictures just after sunset. There's a full moon, and she's outside. All the animals are fed, and she's out on the porch of the trailer, and she takes a picture of the moon, and then she pans over and she takes a picture of the tree line, big aspen tree line, right, probably about 40 yards from the property where they live, incidentally. And all of a sudden, things just kick off. Like this woman didn't know anything. I mean, literally, I knew nothing about it. She started getting zapped. She runs in the house. They're beating on the side of the trailer. They absolutely terrorize her all night, right? So she calls up, gets a hold of this woman who comes back, and she reviews the photo, and she had taken a picture of a portal, and they did not like that. And that's how we found out that the end of this story was that this woman, after this, besides that shot, has had some of the most amazing encounters now that she knows and is able to replay things that happened over the course of her 30-plus year career that she could never put a finger on until this happened. And then she just broke out with, 50, 60 just incredible encounter / high strangeness stories that she went through in her career, which just goes to show the people that are out there in the real world looking and doing this stuff are some of those valuable contacts to have, that and natives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Listen, I got one more. This is my favorite one. I relayed this last year, but I'm going to tell it. So this woman is out on patrol, and she's got a spot in, Apache Sitgreaves where she stops to go urinate when she's got to go. You know what I mean? Like when she's at part of her route, So, and it's in the middle of like pumpkin nuts nowhere, man, And so she gets out of her Jeep and she goes over to a tree and she gets ready to relieve herself. And she says all of a sudden, like a vid screen type thing opened up right in front of her, like 15 feet in front of her. And this guy came walking left to right through the vid screen. And he was dressed in like frontier attire with like a coonskin cap and a flintlock musket. And he's like hunting, stalking. And he goes from left to right and then disappears out of the picture of the screen. Then she gets mind speak that says, "This is what I saw the first time I saw your kind." It was like somebody from like Lewis and Clark era, like way back, like a French trapper or something back in the late 16, early 1700s. And she says, "Now you're everywhere and we are receding." That was what she was told. She said the voice was a female voice. She sounded very old. She's had contact with this same forest person again, but nothing to the extent that she had that day. You couldn't make that story up. You just couldn't do it.
No,
You know what I mean? And this woman,
that's
she would never do it. You know?
that's crazy, and
Yeah.
that's really informative too. That's an awesome story.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know if she actually saw a vid screen or she was given an image in her mind, but she believes it seemed like it was a physical, like kind of like a window into the past opening up in front of her, and she saw this. And this woman's not given to flights of fancy at all. You know what I mean? Like she's a realist, and there's her truth. You know,
That's
another
amazing.
aspect of the phenomenon. You know, how do you reconcile that with flesh and blood?
Well, what's interesting is biblically, there's been other human type races here before we came into the picture, and that's where some of the thoughts of my, as far as what Sasquatch is, they may have been here before us. You know, I have some access to a military intelligence officer, and I heard from him that he had stated that there's all different kinds of human-like people that do live in the earth. And because of what's going on with the core heating up and the fake climate change, that might get you dropped real quick. but it's a natural process that's going through the whole solar system. Right now, Mars is actually getting lakes and stuff because their ice is thawing out on that planet because of the solar heating. There's a bigger phenomenon that's coming. It has nothing to do with multiples and stuff like that here on this planet. But because of the fact that the inner Earth is heating up, there's going to be a lot of things coming out of the Earth that people are eventually going to see. And I do know one type of humanoid looks just like us, but their entire body is covered with hair, all the way up to their eyes, fingernails, everything. They're a little shorter than us. They're about 750 or 375 pounds, built stocky. They have different muscle structures within their shoulders. And there are an ancient people who want nothing to do with us, and they've lived way longer than we have. I mean, think of how many thousands of years we lived, and they lived way beyond that. They've already established their peace within their culture, and that's how they live. And obviously, they won't want nothing to do with us. But because of what's happening in the surface, I guess the government is housing some of these people. They do dress up in clothes, and they're very intelligent. They have a whole different process of how they view the world and what they do with themselves. Their people, totally different than ours. But a lot of these things are going to be coming out in the future. We'll probably see some of these things within this year.
I feel like
there's
been a lot like.
And so what do you say is the reason? Hold on, Chris. Let me take this question real quick. What do you say is the reason that Bigfoot are becoming more aggressive? That's a question for you, Dark Woodz.
Well, we haven't seen that up here. The situations are definitely independent to each other. I mean, like I said earlier, you could walk in, piss one off, and don't even realize you did because they have a whole different way of living than we do. And that could seem aggressive. I do seem to think that the Sasquatches down south seem to be more aggressive than the ones up north. But when you get into Alaska, those are extremely aggressive. So, it's once again, these forest people are just like people. You got good ones, you got bad ones, you got ones that want to do the right things, you got ones that want to destroy things. So, I mean, whenever you run into one, that's the gambit. You don't know what you're facing. You don't know what disposition it's going to be in. So that's why I use great discernment. Even I don't care how good or how I coexist with whatever's out here. I never let my guard down ever.
The Weishaupt want to know, why do you think people can't get a good picture of a dog man?
Supernatural.
I agree, and it happens a lot of the time. And I think that they're able to break up that frequency. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but you look at it and you look at people, which some people call experts, and I don't think that there's any experts. There's researchers and investigators, but when it comes down to it, everybody's trying to find out and understand these things. But when it comes down to it, just like when you're taking pictures of ghosts or any other supernatural creature or being, and y'all might say that flesh and blood only, and that's each person's entitled to their opinion. But for me, when it comes down to it, the pictures do not always show up high quality 1080. It's not going to always get a high definition picture. And I think it's them. They have the ability to cause that. And from what I've heard, a lot of people in a lot of encounters will say that they tell them, don't take the picture. They don't want you taking pictures of them. And a lot of the times they're also able to evade having pictures taken of them, evade trail cameras and stuff like that. So that's just my opinion on that. Y'all, we are it's acting up again. We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. We're going to go ahead and shut it down because we're past the time, and he's out in the woods, and I'm going to let him go in too. It's probably dinner time unless he's already eaten dinner, but we're going to go ahead and shut it down for the night. Dark Woods, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for coming on to co-host too. At the last minute, I was worried I would get shut out like I did again last week, but I'm definitely there's y'all had a lot of good comments out there in the chat tonight. And I thank y'all for that. Just understand, whenever we talk about stuff on the show, we're all bringing up theories. You've always got to play devil's advocate when it comes to this stuff. We don't want to be one of the people who just you don't want to be a yes man to everything. You have to try to take stuff with a grain of salt, ask questions. And just because, like, whether it's Chris or me, whether we ask the guest a question or the guest might ask us a question and say, well, just like Darkwood said, I don't believe issue with him saying that because he's entitled to his opinion, but I also respect his opinion as well because we're all here to learn from each other. So nobody is feeling attacked here on the show or on the panel. It's good to have differences of opinion and to ask deeper questions. That's how you learn. So with that being said, anybody, Darkwoods, do you have any closing words before we shut down for the night?
Yeah, this year, like I said earlier, it's going to be a lot of celestial things, a lot of spiritual things, a lot of crazy things are going to go down this year. Mark my words, you're going to see some things that you won't even believe, and that's guaranteed. So just do your best to try to understand that there's a bigger picture in this world, and it's all actually for our best interest.
Chris, any closing words for the night?
That line, brother.
Yep. I'm serious about that.
That's about as vanilla as you can say without still telling the truth. You know?
Yeah.
It's awesome. Awesome. Great show, man.
We're going to say y'all good night. And thank you.
Hey, it's nice meeting you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
It was nice meeting you.
Oh, you too, man. Let's reach out. I'll try and get a hold of you on Facebook Messenger or something.
Yeah, do that for sure.
We'll compare some notes.
Oh, yeah. I got some notes.
You too.
All right, chat. With that being said, we're gonna tell everybody good night. Thank y'all for showing up tonight. Y'all really showed up and showed out tonight, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. Y'all make sure y'all share this chat, share the live with everybody, share it in other groups. And with that being said, everybody have a good night.
Good night, all.
All right, take care, everybody.
All right, man.